This is a special edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Coming up next, so stay tuned.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Alrighty. This is a special edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast. And a reason why is because episode 30 was filled with free agency transactions in the National Football League. And I did not have time to put in my interview with Nationals on-field reporter Alex Chappell, her first year with Masson. She previously did Tampa Bay Rays baseball along with some football for ESPN and the SEC network. So I really appreciate her time doing this. So the reason why we're doing the special edition is for the interview because I wanted to get it in on episode 30, but we just didn't have time. So we're going to roll that interview now with Alex Chappell, taking a look at the national season, what spring training's looking like so far, and so on and so forth. So Alex Chappell coming up right now.
Alrighty, Josh Kirby back with you on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. As always, brought to you in part by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you check them out in stores, Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant. And make sure you try their new salt and pepper chips. I have on the phone with me now Alex Chappell, first-year reporter for Masson, covering the Washington Nationals this season. We're very excited to have her on the show. And Alex, before we begin, I just wanted to give you a very warm welcome to Washington, probably one of the greatest sports towns, in my opinion. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Josh. Thanks so much for having me on. And yes, I couldn't agree with you more. I grew up in Cabin John, Maryland, so just over the bridge from Washington, D.C., and this is home for me, and getting a chance to cover my hometown team, it's a dream come true. So super excited to be on the show with you today. Thanks so much.
Yes, and but before you cover Masson, you actually did a lot like college football for ESPN. You did the Rays you did the Rays baseball broadcast as well. So it's really great. I've seen you have done a lot here. So do you want to go back and talk about some of the stuff you have done before joining Masson for us?
Yes, it's been a decade in the works to make my way back to Washington, D.C., but I went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide. I knew I always wanted to go to a big sports school, and that's how I started my career covering the football team while I was in college for our campus radio station. And then upon graduation, I started working in local television for the CBS affiliate in Birmingham, Alabama, as a one-person band reporter. So shooting, editing, writing all my stories, and I mostly covered, actually at that point, Auburn. So that was interesting, covering my college's rival, but it was a blast covering SEC football. And then from there, I stayed in local news, but moved up to Boston, and for 3 years, I was at WHDH. At the time, they were the NBC affiliate, so covering all the local teams in Boston, and what an experience that was. When I first started there, at 7 News, the Red Sox won the 2013 World Series. So it was an amazing time to begin there, and it's just an incredible sports town. It's a huge experience. And then from there, I had the opportunity to work for SEC Network and ESPN as a sideline reporter covering college football. So for the last 3 years, I've traveled all around the country covering various schools and different conferences. It's just, there's nothing like Saturdays in the fall. It's amazing. And 2 years ago, I covered the Tampa Bay Rays for Fox Sports Sun. I covered about 142 of their 162 games. From there, I covered postseason baseball for TBS. And with those experiences, and just through networking and sending my resume reel, and it's right. That's what it comes down to in this industry. The stars aligned, and I had the chance to make my way back here to my hometown, and really grateful to Masson and the Nationals for this opportunity.
Well, that is awesome. So, before we get started talking about Nationals baseball, I sort of want to ask you a little bit. Like, so you've done football and baseball. So, just a random question: what's harder to prepare for, a baseball game or a football game? On as terms of like interviewing, writing down notes and stuff. Like, what's more harder to prepare for a game, like before you have to actually sideline report?
Josh, that's a great question. They're very similar in a sense because it comes down to your research and preparation, and knowing the teams, and learning about all the different players. But it's different also with football. We really don't find out until the week before which game we're going to be covering. So you have less time to prepare and film study, and obviously it's a lot more players, right? Especially with college football. And then with football, it's a lot more in-game reporting. So if an injury takes place, you're the eyes and ears on the field. You're describing what you see. It's a lot more, I guess, adjusting your reports to what's happening in game. So I would say it's a lot more just in the moment reporting, whereas baseball, what's really neat about being a team reporter, you're all in with the organization, and you get to know everyone from their families, their wives, their kids. You learn so much about their background, about the team's history, and you get to know everyone in the organization from top to bottom. And so then when it comes to research and reporting, you're the preparation doesn't change as football. I mean, you need to know about who they're playing, just any big storylines going into a series. But then as far as the in-game reports, maybe you've worked with your producer and you're like, hey, I like this story from the night before. How can we incorporate it into this broadcast tonight? If there's something on a player that you found out, so it's more of a pre-packaged story going into a series. And then the game, as well as football, things will dictate when and where you would do that report. But it's a lot more pre-planned stories, as opposed to football is definitely more in the moment.
Well, that is an amazing look from your perspective, and you're probably covering more ground in football than you are in baseball, because in baseball you're just in a camera well, and in football you're going like from one goal line to the other, from one sideline to the other. So.
Yeah, it's great. I should get one of those trackers to see how many steps I take during a football game. It's a good workout.
Yeah. So, college football, any memorable games that you have witnessed during your time covering for football for ESPN or SEC Network?
Oh gosh, there's so many great games. Just I guess 2 years ago for Thanksgiving, it was the first time I covered the Oregon State rivalry game Thanksgiving weekend. They call it the Civil War game, but that was really cool just to see a rivalry game like that in the Pac-12. And Oregon fans, I mean, they really know how to rock it. It was a night game. They all had different songs they were singing, so that was really fun to be a part of, just as far as the game day experience. But my favorite game, it's got to be two years ago when Alabama won the national championship. I was covering the game that they were playing Georgia in Atlanta for the SEC network, and what a finish! I mean, it was just so unbelievable going into overtime, and you have this. It was crazy. So that was really cool, especially. You try not to be biased ever. You're there to be a reporter and fair, but there's nothing like it being on the field and watching your alma mater win the way that they did, and the confetti starts coming down. And of course, that was our first look at Tua Tagovailoa for the Crimson Tide, and it was just yeah, it was a really cool game to witness.
Yeah, I mean, I would never forget that championship game either. Like Tua Tagovailoa comes in, replacing Jalen Hurts, which is
Yeah.
a huge move to put on a head coach's shoulders, like making that decision. And he comes out, throws a bomb after getting sacked for a ginormous amount of yards, and he just bombs one into the end zone to win the game. That was crazy.
It was great. Apparently, after that throw, after that touchdown pass, he looked at Nick Saban or went to the sideline and he just said, "Coach, I needed more room. I had to take the sack." So that was pretty funny, but that's just his personality, you know, and gosh, the confidence and everything he showed in that game, it was incredible, incredible.
Yes, a lot of great stories from me so far. So I want to get into the talk of the town right now. It's baseball season, obviously, and of course you made the trip down to warm Florida while I'm up here bearing the snow and the cold. But what down in Florida, what was sort of the vibe you were getting from the players, the coaches? After last year not making the postseason, but this year they have a lot of new additions and a lot of
Hmm.
familiar faces. And what was sort of the attitude going into spring training, getting ready for the season to start?
Oh, great atmosphere. I mean, and that's one of the things I love about spring training. You can feel that it's a new season. There's just so much excitement to get things underway. But one of the things that the general manager, Mike Rizzo, he really talked about that they focused on was you have this core of veterans, high character players, and the new faces that they acquired were not only highly talented players, but also high character players. And somebody like Brian Dozier, that's just Rizzo called him a glue guy. I mean, he's all about team chemistry, how to get everyone working together. Every day before they take the field, they have a moment where the team all meets together. It's called the Circle of Trust. And a couple of the players were talking about, this is our year. Not only do we all need to be close, but let's make sure our families are really close. And so it's been a really, really great atmosphere. Everybody seems super excited, and no, they're ready. They're ready to go. I think, like you mentioned, not making the postseason last year. I mean, sometimes things like that need to happen. The organization, gosh, they've given us so many years of winning seasons and making the postseason, but sometimes you need to see it's so hard to get there, right? And maybe we were a little bit spoiled. So now that having a season where there's some motivation there, and it's going to be a really, really challenging NL East, but there's a lot of confidence. They're ready to go, and it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, and in the NL East this year, it's going to be really interesting because Bryce Harper just signed that 13-year, $330 million contract, which I don't know what your thoughts on that is, but in my opinion, I don't think the Nationals are going to miss Bryce Harper because they have young talent in Juan Soto, who was an animal last year, and Victor Robles from oh man, what is it? Harrisburg, I believe. But
Mm-hmm.
Bryce Harper, what are your thoughts on his contract, and do you think that's gonna make the NL East more of a tougher division this season?
It's going to be so fun. I mean, everybody has circled on their calendar right now that first series when the Phillies come to town on April 2nd and 3rd. And that's what you want, right? Rivalries, passion, just something that gets all the feelings, the juices going. And I loved what Max Scherzer and Steven Strasburg said. They both kind of just said, hey, we're happy for him. We've got a great scouting report. And Mike Rizzo came out and said, I'll shake his hand, I'll give him a hug, but then I want to kick his, right, what he said. And
Yeah.
I'm sure he wants to kick mine too. So it's that's what it's going to be about. It's going to be heated rivalries, but you're not just going to see great matchups with the Phillies. It's also going to be with the Mets too. And right out of the gate, the Nationals opening day, they're facing the Mets. So it's just going to be a fun National League East, I mean, of course, the Atlanta Braves, they won the division last year. They're not a team to sleep on. They have a lot of young stars, a lot of young talent. Bo Porter, working with him last week on Mass and All Access, he made a great point that having a chance to get Anibal Sanchez and Kurt Suzuki, that's addition by subtraction from the Atlanta Braves. So to have those two players come over, I mean, it was done so by design. They wanted players that had played for some of these NL East teams. So it's going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to being there in the well and hearing the fan reaction the first time that Harper steps into the batter's box. But it's something that, hey, this is why sports is something that's just amazing to all of us. It's so much fun. And that night, April 2nd, when the Phillies are in town, I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and but as I said earlier, I'm not sure if you'll agree with me here, but I don't think the Nationals are going to miss Bryce Harper that much because, as I said earlier, Juan Soto and Victor Robles, young stars rising up, and we still have some veterans there. So, do you think the Nats are going to miss him at all?
Oh, I mean, it's hey, right? He was in DC wearing a Nationals uniform. I mean, it's things change, teams change, but it's he's a big part of this organization. So, and he's a terrific player. But I think Mike Rizzo said it right that hey, they're focused on the guys they have in this clubhouse now, and that was something he emphasized on MLB Network and a couple times. And so, they have players here that it's all about this team, the chemistry here, and they're focused on the players they have in this clubhouse to put together a winning season. So at this point now, Josh, as you pointed out, they've moved on.
Yeah, and as you said, also Kurt Suzuki picked up from Atlanta, and we have a strong catching core as well, along with our great starting rotation with Patrick Corbin getting picked up, Steven Strasburg, and Max Scherzer. So give me a little bit of insight. How's the rotation looking and the catchers? How are they preparing? Do you think they're ready to go for the start of the season?
Yeah, there's so much excitement. I had a chance to interview Steven Strasburg 2 days ago, and he talked about Kurt Suzuki caught him in parts of 2012 and 2013. So there's definitely some familiarity there. But both Kurt Suzuki and Yan Gomes coming over from Cleveland. He's worked with some dynamite starting rotation. So it's going to be, so far, they're putting in the work, the pitchers and catchers, to get to know each other. The catchers are doing everything they can to learn this staff inside and out. And now there's just, more information it's amazing to me, all the information that they have with analytics, everything to learn, and, to get the best out of your pitching staff. So, but you look at this rotation, you already had Scherzer and Strasburg. They bring back Hellickson for a second year now. And then with the additions of Patrick Corbin and Anibal Sanchez, I mean, you could argue this is the best rotation in all of baseball.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season. And as you know, it's still spring training, but do you have any predictions on how the NL and the AL will play out? Do you see any strong teams besides the Nationals or anything for this season?
Yes, I think as far as the National League goes, the NL East is by far the toughest division. It's going to be so competitive, and that's a cool thing. I don't know that the Nats in years previously have really had this. It's going to be fun to watch the NL East. They haven't had, I guess, this loaded of teams in the past, right? But the off-season moves by all these teams, with the exception of the Marlins, it has everybody watching this NL East. It'll be a race to the finish, but I'm really excited. There's still been a lot of predictions that the Nationals will win the division. I think they were projected on one website for 92 or 95 wins, but hey, I always like to go for they're going to get 100 wins.
That's always
probably
nice.
Lofty. Yeah, lofty expectations. But no, it should be. I think the NL East always on. If you look at the American League, I think the AL East, right? That's always a fun race to watch. It's Yankees, Red Sox. Tampa Bay isn't going anywhere, so it's, I would say, National League East, AL East. I mean, it's going to be fun, both races to the end.
Yeah. So, looking like a great season, and I can't wait for it to get started. And we'll be listening and watching you along the way. We always tune into the Nats game. So, that is Alex Chappell. Any last thoughts before we let you go, Alex?
Oh, Josh, I just can't thank you enough for having me on with you today. This was a blast, and I look forward to talking with you throughout the season.
Yes, definitely. And where can my followers find you on social media?
Oh, perfect. Well, if you search Alex Chappell, so ALEX and then CHAPPELL, I should come up. But my Twitter handle, because Twitter makes it a little difficult to change things. It's still by my maiden name, so it's @A Cordry, which is CORDDRY, and then on Instagram I'm @AEChapel10.
Yeah, and I totally forgot you got married the 1st of 2019, so congratulations on that as well.
Thank you so much. We got married on 1/19/19, and my husband Scott, we've been together for 5 years, so it was a really beautiful day. We got married down in Florida, and we have a dog and a cat. So if you check out my social media, you can see a lot of pictures of our fun household. So
yeah, that's great. So Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, and hopefully this won't be the last time we'll be talking to you. And enjoy your season with the Nationals, and we'll be watching you all over TV.
Thanks, Josh. Have a great one.
Yes, ma'am. You as well.
All right. That was my interview with Alex Chappell, on-field reporter for the Nationals on MASN, taking the place of Dan Kolko, who will be moving up to Nats Extra pre- and post-game show coverage along with Bo Porter. Can't thank Alex enough for taking the time to do an interview with us on the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. We really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed interviewing with her. So hopefully we can get her on again in the near future. That's all the time we have on this episode of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Thanks once again to Route 11 Chips for sponsoring this episode, and Mild Swagger by Cosmo on PremiumBeat.com, and Dave Johnson, as always. We should be back next week, me and CJ, for episode 31 of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. Until then, we say so long and peace out.